While we're waiting here, I have a couple of different polls I'm going to pop up on your screen. Again, this is just for me to get a little feel about our audience here. Sorry about that. There's a window in GoToWebinar just popped up in the background. It wouldn't let me control anything. Um, one more. We'll get started here in 1 second. Okay. So I'd like to start out a little bit about myself. I've been in the WCMS space for about 6 years. Used a number of different things, not limited to CQ, Documentum, Drupal, SharePoint, WordPress. I've been doing Java, I know at least 12 years, probably more than that actually. And as far as just large projects, over 10 Fortune 500 go lives, but I do a lot of work with a lot of smaller companies too. So that's, a very large number at this point. And I did leave on my my migration experience. Some of you might have attended the first webinar that I did, and that was specific to migrations. But I have done large migrations for various companies from like Documentum to SharePoint. Also CQ migrations, specifically for Adobe.com. That was a migration from 5.3 to 5.5. And it was a very large content repository. Obviously, you see 1.5 terabytes. And there's a lot of images and videos, but content too. So we do have a mixture of people on. I'm going to give a high level. So what's the purpose of this? Sort of basically explore what is JSP. I'm sure everyone on here knows JSP. Might not know what TLDs are or be as familiar with that. And it looks like we have about a 50-50 split with people that have developed and are using OSGi bundles versus people that have never heard of it or never ever used it. So we'll get into OSGi. And then we're going to talk about when to use each of these various technologies and also sort of how to use them in concert. So at a high level, these are the topics that we're going to be going through. What is JSP? What are TLDs? And also what is OSGi? And then when to use each. And this is specifically to CQ applications and CQ environment. So what is JSP? JSP stands for Java Server Pages. Pretty straightforward. It's essentially a hybrid of Java code and also HTML, XML, DHTML, or any other type of. There's many other document types that are valid within a JSP page. So how is JSP compiled? Well, like we're saying, it's a dynamic page. There's Java code on the page that needs to run. Well, it's compiled at runtime for each request of each JSP page, and this is running actually on the server. So it's not client side; it's on the server, and it's run in a virtual machine, typically a Java virtual machine, and especially in the case of CQ, it's definitely a Java virtual machine. I don't know many other cases of people using anything else but a JVM. What does JSP allow us to do? Well, it allows us to code dynamic and complex HTML, typically HTML, but as I said, there's many other doc types that are valid, including XML. And it does this by leveraging Java functionality, such as the more complex things that would be more complex to do in HTML settings, so like while loops, for loops, if-else statements, AJAX. You can embed JavaScript within a JSP page, and pretty much anything else that Java brings to the table. In CQ, JSP specifically is used for all your page templates and your components. So each individual page within a CQ website, it's typically, and when I say typically, I mean 95, probably higher percent of most cases, JSP is the technology that are going to be rendering your pages. So as far as the template, like the structure of a whole page, and then also individual components. So there are other cases of using JSP, especially within a CQ context, but mainly templates and components are the use cases. An individual JSP does not have to be complete. What I mean by that is it doesn't have to generate a fully qualified HTML page or an XML document. It could just be, in the case of like a component, the specific HTML just for that component, but the purpose of maybe that JSP page is to be included within a larger framework, such as components being included in templates, and also templates being included in other templates. So it's very dynamic language. What are TLDs? So I'm sure everyone on the call has heard of JSP and actually has used JSP. It's a technology that's been around a long time. TLDs have been around for a while too, but they don't get as much use I've seen out in the field. But they're very powerful. TLD stands for Tag Library Descriptor. So what are TLDs? They allow easy reuse of Java code within the JSP. Essentially, they are tying a custom tag, and by custom tag, you get to define a namespace and a tag name. That's the combination, to a specific definition in Java class. A namespace meaning for like one TLD file, you can usually specify a namespace, and within that namespace, so let's say 6D. Would be the namespace, and then each individual tag name that you define, it's a combination namespace with tag name to define each custom tag. And it ties this tag to a Java class. So I'm sure everyone's familiar with most of the out-of-the-box HTML tags. On top of that, you can essentially, with TLDs, define your own tags. And then define also how they are rendered. And like I say here, this class handles the rendering of that custom tag. So commonly used CQ TLDs. Well, CQ includes the CQ tag library. So if you've developed templates or components before, I'm sure you've used the CQ include tag, or another common one is the CQ text tag. CQ also comes, it's built on Sling framework, so the Sling tag library is also included, as well as JSTL. So I'm going to give a little TLD example. So this is an example of a tag definition as you would find within a TLD file. And now this would not be a complete TLD because obviously the namespace is not defined anywhere in this. But this would be a definition found within a namespace that's describing specifically the tag name. So here we see a description, gets the page's current locale. And then the name of the tag, page locale. The tag class, this is what ties it to your Java class. So your tag class common example, WCM JSP tags display page locale tag. So that page locale tag is the Java code that will run at compile time when this tag is encountered. And then you can also add other attributes to a tag, and this one also is defining that the body content is empty for the tag. So this would be the example of the page locale tag class. So this is a Java class, and this is what will get run when the tag is encountered inside a JSP. And so that's I guess I didn't really get into that, but TLDs define these custom tags, and then you can use the custom tags within your JSP pages. So at runtime, like we talked about before, the JSP is compiled when someone requests the individual page. So while your server is compiling this page, and if it encounters a custom tag, it tries to find the definition. If it can't find it, obviously there's going to be errors, but you need to define obviously your definitions, otherwise your JSPs won't be valid. But like we showed in that tag definition on the previous slide, it tells the compiler to go run this Java class when encountering those page locale tags. So this code is pretty straightforward. Basically, what it's doing here is it defines a default locale, which is enus, and then it also has the do tag code. This is the standard, one of the many standard functions from the simple tag support interface, and this is the code that runs when the tag is compiled. So basically, you're looking up the current page, and we know the context. We're getting the context from the JSP page, this specific page that this tag is in, and which the specific JSP that's being rendered currently. So we get the JSP context. Then we're getting an attribute, and that attribute is current page. Check if current page is null. If it's not, we're defining a string locale. And basically, with the content helper, we look up what the current page's locale is. And so this is something that, this is an example that you'd see typically on multilingual sites, or it's a real big strength of CQ is being able to sort of build content and templates once and leverage them across various locales and languages. So all this is doing is grabbing the current locale as specified by the page that the user is at. So then how would this TLD be used? Well, you could place it in the header of a JSP template. So that line of code there basically would be defining in the header of your JSP page the content language. And if you see there, the actual custom tag is what's within the quotes of the content data. So you see your example page locale. Well, we didn't see the full TLD file, but obviously that TLD should be embedded into a namespace called example. But page locale was the definition of our tag there. So what's going to happen is at runtime, when the user accesses this page, it's going to run that Java code, and the Java code goes, gets the page, and it looks up what the locale of that page is. And then it actually enters that content directly in place of this tag. This tag will be replaced with the content of whatever's returned from that doTag function, which should hopefully be the locale of the page that the user's on. So why is this powerful? Well, because you don't have to rewrite that Java code over and over and over for each of your templates. All you have to do is embed this TLD, this custom tag, and it will reuse that Java code, that Java function that we saw on the previous page, that where it looks up the locale of the current page. So that's code that doesn't have to be rewritten per JSP. And also, if there's any changes to that code, let's say CQ gets upgraded and now that lookup of that locale is not necessarily a valid function, well, all you have to do is change it within that Java class. And on every one of your pages that includes this example page locale tag, custom tag, well, you don't have to update the class anywhere in any of those JSPs. It automatically gets updated by updating that class. So very reusable, very flexible. And upgradability is in one location versus anywhere across all your JSPs. So this is a simple example, but they can become very complex. Personally, I've used TLDs for a number of different things, including video tags. So writing custom HTML for different types of video players. Let's say the video file is a SWIFT versus a QuickTime, or the different media formats there are. Well, you could have a class and just call your tag video, and it, depending on the type of asset, will put in the proper HTML tags. We did an example with locale. You could do the exact same thing for language. So depending on the language of whatever page you're on, you can have that get embedded directly into your page. Also, a common one that we've used on a number of different projects is disabling the edit mode tag. And this is something that maybe people don't know about, but it's very helpful. You can wrap content blocks in a JSP in, let's say, a component or a template, and essentially disable the editing of specific components, whatever your business logic is. But depending on, so some examples would be only be able to edit the header component or like a navigation component if you're looking at the home page, but not be able to edit that component within any children of the home page. I'm sure there's many other examples, and pretty much anything you can think of and you can code in Java, you can do here with a custom TLD. So what is OSGi? OSGi stands for Open Services Gateway Initiative Framework. It is a framework. So definition, I pulled this off of Wikipedia. It's a module system and service platform for the Java programming language that implements a complete and dynamic component model. Well, that's one of those definitions where it describes really well, but it's sort of confusing too. So, and also, so the CQ uses the Apache Sling framework and Apache Felix for managing and deploying OSGi bundles. There are a couple other open source OSGi tools out there, but specifically to CQ, it is these two in concert that do all the managing and deploying of the OSGi bundles within CQ. And actually, CQ itself now is deployed as an OSGi bundle. And I believe that is as of 5.5. So, what does it mean that OSGi is dynamic? Well, the OSGi framework, it handles the class loading of your bundles. It allows more than one version of a particular module. You could have them all running at the same time without class conflicts. Tongue in cheek, I say. Bundles are, this is important, hot swappable. It means you can update an individual bundle or fix a bug. Instead of an update of logic code, you can fix bugs without having to restart your application. And this is code and all. This is very powerful. So, you could modularize different components of your application, and depending on business logic changes throughout the life cycle of your application, you'll never have to take your website down, and you can, in real time, hot swap versions of your bundles without taking your website down. So that is a very key bonus, I guess, of what OSGi brings to the table. So what are bundles? So bundles contain, so a bundle is essentially, it's these individual units of what the OSGi framework is deploying. So a bundle contains one or more Java classes, and also any necessary libraries in order for the functionality of the bundle to work. So, if you're doing any XML transformations, you might want to include specific Java libraries that allow you to do XML transformations. So a bundle can be standalone. That means it doesn't rely on other bundles. It also can be deployed by itself. But you can also specify in the manifest of the bundle other bundles that this bundle relies on to work with the import package declaration. So it's essentially individual units of functionality, and it's all the code necessary for that functionality wrapped up into one neat package. Also contained in the bundle is an activator class. This is necessary, and this is what is called when the framework starts your bundle. So there's two functions, start and stop, and pretty straightforward. Start is called when your bundle is started up, and you can put any other logic you need in there during the startup of your bundle. And stop is called when your bundle is stopped with the framework. And there are several different states that a bundle can be in. These are pretty straightforward. I'm not going to go into detail. They can definitely be looked up here. But installed, resolved, starting, active, stopping, uninstalled. And if you've done any type of adminning of CQ instances, I'm sure you're pretty familiar with where the Felix console is at whatever your server location is /system/console. If you've never been there, I highly recommend it. Go there. On your CQ instance, just type in /system/console, and then your default admin password, which out of the box is admin. It'll bring up the Felix, the Apache Felix console, and via this GUI interface, this is where you can control it. First of all, you can see all the bundles that are installed in your system, and also the state of all those bundles. and you are able to start, stop, refresh all those bundles, as well as dig into each of them and see the different dependencies and also what classes are contained. So also with Apache Felix and OSGi is easy configuration of bundle variables. What you see here is a bundle that comes with the CQ product out of the box. It's the CQ mail service, and essentially what this does is this configuration view allows you to configure an SMTP server, and so the different properties or variables of your OSGi bundle can be configured at real time, and the values updated through this interface. And so in this example, obviously you want to specify what your SMTP server hostname is in the port, and this is a typical configuration out of the box. CQ. None of these will be configured with default values, or rather, I think the default values are blank. But if you want to hook up a CQ instance to an SMTP server within your network, this is where you'd go to do it. So this is a great example of an individual unit of a bundle. So the bundle specifically is the mail service, and all this bundle does is essentially allows the CQ system to send SMTP mail via this bundle service call. And it depends on the configuration from an admin here to work properly. If this is not configured and you try to send a SMTP mail from your CQ system, well, it's not going to know where to go. It's not going to have an SMTP server, but in real time, you can update these properties, which is a major strength of OSGi, is the configuration of all the properties. So here's another example of sort of an OSGi class header. So in this case, this OSGi is described as a service. Again, this is this source notation, the SRC. This is, I believe, new in 5.5, and it allows you to define all the properties of an OSGi bundle or a service bundle that's deployed via OSGi. So here we have a service. It's a component, and the label of this service is example. It has various property names. So it has a service descriptor, the service vendor, and a service PID. Also, the interface is defined here. And then below that definition of interface is the actual Java class that is part of the bundle. And an example also within that class is another property. So then the name of this property would be subject. The label is subject, and you're going to give it a description and a value reference. So that property subject would be something that would appear within your bundle's configuration within the Felix console. So those definitions control what properties appear for the specific configuration for your Felix. For your bundle within the Felix console. So to give an example, the SMTP server host name would actually be the property label, and this bundle looks like it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 properties that you can see there, and your properties can have various different types too. So obviously, as in Boolean here or strings. So that's a high level of what an OSGi bundle is, and essentially what you can use them for. So meat and potatoes. When do we want to use JSP versus OSGi? Well, there's a lot of different factors, and there's really no hard set rule. But the things that you need to keep in the back of your head are, what are you trying to do? If you're developing a component, well, first of all, let's lay some groundwork. Um, all your web services should be OSGi bundles. That's the framework that CQ uses, and you know, and that gives you configurability of your services, all the properties of them. It allows you to hot swappable deploy and update your business logic without having to take down the service. So the service is up in real time, 24/7 for a high availability system, and you can change and update the business logic by just deploying a new bundle to your framework. Now, it's a little misleading, the name of our webinar here, JSP versus OSGi. If I was to rename it again, I'd name it JSP and OSGi, because both technologies bring their own strengths and weaknesses. Now, specifically for JSP templates, that is going to define essentially the layout of your individual pages. Now, when you're talking about a template, you want a template to be, I'd say, very bare bones. So your template should essentially just define the structure of whatever page type that the user is looking at, but not define any functionality. The functionality can then be further defined within the JSP template by what components are embedded within that template. So for an individual component, how do we decide when we want to use Java code directly in our component, in our JSP component, versus leveraging custom tags within our templates and components, or versus calling services or shared functionality from an OSGi bundle? Well, if the scope of your component is very narrow, and the code is not used anywhere else, I would recommend just doing it really simply one-off within a component, within doing the business logic within the JSP component itself. If there is a case where you can reuse the Java code that you'd be embedding into that component or template, or component rather, I'd say more than once, so 2 times to infinity, I would put it within an OSGi bundle or into a TLD. So now, where's the line between TLDs and OSGi? Now, TLDs, I look at them as more of Java code to render an HTML structure, whereas OSGi is more Java code to define and run business logic. So, such as services, like if you're calling to such as the mail service, or different service calls. So like, let's say you have a web application that does different price lookups or lookups in a database to define like auctions, so bids and an auction posts and stuff like that. Well, the business logic there is actually stuff that's communicating with the database, and it's best to take all your business logic and wrap it up into an OSGi bundle. That way you can update the business logic and have the servlets running without having them taken down. You can update the properties in real time, and you can reuse it across multiple components, or also various websites. So reusability of code is a very key aspect in the decisions of where to place the code. Also, the easy use of property configurations. If you have a lot of unknown property values ahead of time that you are relying upon, well, that is a very great use case for using an OSGi bundle. Through the Felix console, and there's also other ways to update, but the Felix console gives a great GUI interface in order to update the properties of an OSGi bundle. And this is something that might be a property dependent on your server location, or also the development lifecycle of your application, whether your application is within dev, whether it's within prod, whether it's within test, whether it's within stage. It allows you to define, essentially business rules and servers per environment very, very simply and very easily by just going into the Felix console and updating. Maybe your development environment looks up videos from a specific server, but you have a test server that serves videos, and you also have a production. Well, you configure that differently depending on which environment your CQ server is running in. Also, upgradability. So the OSGi, I'm going to keep harping on it, but the hot swappability of the bundles within the OSGi console is a very important aspect of that technology, and sort of why it came to be there. If your code is something that is going to go through a lot of iterations and the business logic is not necessarily defined, you can't encapsulate it very quickly into a component. That's something that should go into the OSGi bundle layer. So Java code in a TLD versus an OSGi bundle. Well, like I already mentioned, TLDs are more for structuring your HTML and the data structure of your HTML and reusability of data points in that regard. Whereas OSGi, your services and other shared functionality that is core business logic, but not necessarily tied to the presentation of whatever code that you're trying to do. Excuse me, one second. So basically, why did OSGi come to be? Well, we were previously in a world of web services where code, specifically to each individual code packages, really didn't have views into the other code running in the system. OSGi sort of opens that world up. It allows you to create a class that is packaged, create a class, create a bundle that is encapsulated within itself, but can be leveraged across your site in multiple different components. So, perfect example is that mail service. Now, you don't have to redefine or even know what mail service is running on your server, but it has a specific functionality of knowing where the SMTP server is and sending emails. And so any component or any other bundle within your website does not have to know how that functionality works. But we know that that functionality exists and that you can call that functionality, and also you don't have to worry about the configurations of that functionality. You don't have to worry about in your components or in your bundles what the SMTP server location is, because that is handled, that is sort of abstracted from the logic of whatever component or bundle that you are currently working on. You just have to know, I want to send a mail, and if that bundle is available, well, you can send a mail through that call to that bundle. So modularity is a main huge point of what OSGi is coming to be a part. And the other thing is just the whole Felix framework and Sling framework deals with all the class loading itself too. So we don't have to worry about conflicts. Don't have to mainly worry about conflicts of loading your classes within that framework. It handles all the loading, the starting and stopping of all the various Java code and classes and pieces in real time within that framework. And any conflict points, it resolves itself. So as well as external libraries. So basically, these are the factors that I would go through, and per component or per business functionality, I sort of run through this checklist, and I see, one, is this a one-off? Is this just quick and dirty, get it done, and it's very simple business logic? I put that in a JSP, and I put that in a component. If this is something that's going to be used more than once, especially if it's dealing with the structure of your HTML, I'd try to take that, package it into a Java class, and put it into a custom tag or a TLD. That way you can leverage it across all your templates and all your components. And you can also centrally control the functionality of that class and only have to update it in one location. I'm sure you've all gotten to places where you had a function that you wrote and you used it across many different components, and well, lo and behold, there was a bug in your logic. And when you updated that, you had to go into each different component and update that one hand by hand by hand. Well, that's what we're trying to avoid, and that's why you should encapsulate logic such as that within a TLD. Well, and then all the heavy lifting business logic and all your services should then, at that point, be wrapped into OSGi bundles as well. And that gives you this exact same encapsulation as what TLDs do, whereas it's one location, update the code, hot swappable, and all your components and all your templates and all your other bundles can leverage and call and have visibility into that business logic. And you only have to, again, change it in that one location or upgrade in that one location. And that encapsulation is extremely powerful, where we're trying to go with building all our web applications. Well, I want to say thank you guys for joining this webinar. I hope it was useful. We do plan to have many more in this series, and specifically, I think we're going to be getting into pretty detailed into web services next time, and get much more technical as far as the new technologies that are coming out, CXF, and get more details on OSGi, how to deploy bundles, how to build and create those in our future webinar series. I hope this was useful. You can reach us at 60labs.com, 6dimensions.com. We have a number of different blogs and articles out there that should be very helpful. And also, if you want any more information, please contact TJ. His email address is on the screen. And we will have this webinar posted shortly. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a great day.